It's about this time of the afternoon that I start thinking about cakes I love to bake, and this one is on top of the list at the moment. It's my pear and wholemeal cake with a little hint of hazelnut. So I'm going to start with the flours. You can just use a plain flour for this, but if you want to add a bit of a nutty flavour to it, a bit of a wholesome flavour to it, then add a little wholemeal flour. So we'll start with about a cup of plain flour. I'm going to measure that out into a bowl. So 1 cup. To that I'll add the wholemeal flour. I need about 2/3 of a cup of wholemeal flour. So whenever I'm working with wholemeal flour in cakes, I add less of the wholemeal flour because you don't want it to be too dense. So we'll just measure that out. It's just 2/3. And I'll just give that a mix so it's combined nicely. So once you've combined both flours, add a pinch of salt, and we need a rising agent. So I add 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Again, mixing that through. Classic afternoon tea cake flavours, cinnamon. So a good pinch of cinnamon and some brown sugar. I love this cake because it's all about mixing it up in the bowl, getting it into a springform tin and then into the oven. So you don't have to worry about mixers and getting them out. So just break up any big chunks of that brown sugar, make a well in the centre, and we can start with our wet ingredients. I like to mix my wet ingredients into a jug first, just makes it so much easier to incorporate. So 3 eggs, we'll crack them into a jug. 1, 2 and 3. And you can use a grapeseed oil for this recipe if you like, or some melted butter. I do recommend getting your eggs at room temperature, melting your butter and also bringing that to room temperature. If it's too hot, then it's going to cook the eggs and it may curdle our batter. We don't want that. So I'm going to mix that together along with a splash of milk. So we'll just whisk that with a whisk, take that out, and then little by little, we're going to add the wet ingredients. I say little by little just because I don't want too many lumps in this, so start to incorporate. You can mix quite rapidly, and then when it starts to get quite thick, that's when I just slowly incorporate the wholemeal flour and the plain flour. You don't want to overwork our flour. If you do that, we're going to end up with a dense cake. So fold everything together until all of that flour has been incorporated. So I'm using a 20 centimetre springform tin. I've placed some baking paper on the base and a collar of baking paper. It's just going to make it much easier to take the cake out. And we're going to add our batter. Now it looks like it's only a small amount of batter, but it will rise significantly as it cooks. And I find the 20 centimetre is the perfect size for this amount. So we'll spread that out, making sure it gets all the way to the sides. It's looking good. And now for the hazelnuts and the pears. So I'm using Pear pears for this. I love the sweetness of them and they just cook down really well. So I'm just going to cut them in half, I'm going to peel and cool them and then cut them into even chunks. I'm going to scatter them over the top of the cake along with some hazelnuts, and then it goes into the oven, really easy. And this cake is going to cook at 180 degrees for about 45 minutes or until a skewer goes through the centre and it comes out clean. Right, cake has come out of the oven. As always, I've allowed it to cool down and let's have a look at it. I love those hazelnuts on top with that 180 degree heat. They've warmed up, they've toasted slightly so they're golden, and all of those pears have just slowly sunk into this delicious afternoon delight. So I'm going to take the base off. You can see why it's so important to just place that baking paper on, because it comes away seamlessly. Ah, so good. Now I would serve this cake as is, a little light dusting of icing sugar over the top. I don't think it needs any cream or ice cream, yogurt. Just have it as is with a lovely hot cuppa. That's a nice cake right there.